additional follow-up question then on that is, in the timing of your activities, as we all collect information and work with a consultant, would our work on assumptions that we're developing or testing be tested by you fiscally?
It could be, yes. There could be some, but the fiscal impact. You're making an assumption here as you're going into it that what's going to be done is going to be more efficient, more streamlined. That you're providing the services for two political entities, two population centers through one governmental entity. And I mean, that's the whole point to doing this, to determine whether or not that's possible. And one would assume then, if the operating costs go down from that whatever the fiscal impact studies that are being done are going to be trended down as far as cost impact, as opposed to up. And if they're going to go up, then obviously that's going to affect your desire to do this.
And how would you in DCA tend to work with a consultant that we would hire to help us study these things?
We would certainly provide the consultant all the information that we have, and that consultant will have access to the conclusions that we're reaching from a fiscal impact.
Do you have staffing information and that tax or budget information that you have said you have?
Oh, yes.
So this fiscal study that's done by the DCA, we don't have to do anything about that.
You don't do the fiscal impact study. We do the melding of the tax information and the specific budget information. In other words, what the total appropriations are, what the other revenue available are to the municipalities, and how the meshing of those numbers is going to figure into the impact on the tax rate.
We don't
both
have
for the existing Merchantville property owners and the existing Cherry Hill property.
We don't have to say to you, do this study. That's something that
it's going to be done.
You are going to do it. I mean, yeah. So we don't have to do a little form to say start this study.
No.
Okay. How current is your data? What year?
Current is the current year. In other words, fiscal 2011 for the calendar year, and fiscal 2010, 2011.
Is it on your website somewhere? Do we have access to it?
That information at the state level probably isn't. That information is all information that we obtain from the local governments. They have to file that information.
Can you provide it, or do we have to go to each local government?
The local governments would provide it, because they have that information.
See, I'd like to see what they give me, and I'd like to see what you have. I'd like to compare the two.
Okay.
That's why I'm asking, would you provide it?
I provide the fiscal impact. We will provide.
Not just the study. No, I want the data. You said you have the debt information, right?
Sure, we get that.
You have a whole list of what bonds were incurred and what year, what the dates were.
The annual debt statement, yes, which the municipality, each municipality has to file with the state.
Great.
So that municipality has that information here.
Do we get it from you, or do we have to get it from the town?
I think you could get it from the towns before you could get it from us.
I want to make sure you understand why I'm asking this.
I understand why you're asking it.
I have done a lot of research over the last 10 years, and I have found that it's very hard to get current data locally. So I'm wondering, I'd like to compare it to whatever you have, because apparently they have to report to you, true or false?
They have to report, not to me personally.
I mean DCA.
DCA, yes. Yeah.
So I'd like to see if we can get 2 decks or 1 deck. If you.
No, I understand, and I certainly think that there's a way that we can.
You think it's possible?
Figure out that, so you can be assured that the information that we're using for the fiscal impact study is the same information that you're getting here.
Thank you.
You get an audit report from towns, outside auditors?
Yes, the state gets the annual audit report every year for each municipality.
So I'm trying to understand the sequencing. So you're going to have your fiscal report. Now, is there a separate DOE report?
That's separate.
Department of Education report as well?
No, I think that the DOE, the two things, it's all they're tax numbers.
Okay.
It will include, the fiscal impact report will include the educational tax rates as well.
And at what point in the process will this be done?
Well, my understanding is that DCA expects the report on this study to be done in the next 5 months.
And this will be done concurrently with the subcommittee work?
Yes.
So again, just to put a fine point on it though, we can't expect this fiscal report from you to have really anything specifically valued. It's more or less a mechanical process with the current state as the
Yes.
assumption. Just so everybody understands, this report isn't our savior that's somehow a magic.
No, it doesn't
document.
obviate your need to do the study.
Right.
What it does is it gives you a raw arithmetic presentation of what it looks like based on the current numbers, the impact would be if the municipalities were to meld.
So certain things are clear out of that, is what is the existing debt service in
Yes.
a big pot, what would that cost to service on a integrated tax basis, but it doesn't say anything about, well, what should public services look like
That's
in
right.
a consolidated community, and what would that cost, what would police cost, what services should look like in a consolidated police department, what should that look like, what are the assumptions, which is the big cost obviously to our public, is what would the educational costs look like across an integrated school district, with some assumptions built in on where schools would be and how many children would go.
But Roger, along those lines, surely DCA has some best practices comparisons that they could avail us of. I mean, I can't imagine that the time that DCA's been operating, that they haven't gathered data and said, you know what, there's a good operation down at Town X, and there's this operation over at Town Y. I mean, surely that would be helpful to us to see what best practices look like that you've gathered, rather than us reinventing the wheel and trying to gather it.
I think as you get into the study process, but whether or not best practices fit in with what the community's desire for service would be.
No. I'm talking raw data. For example, there have been studies done, and they're in the statutes that I read in the last couple of weeks, that show that you have ideal plateaus of town sizes. They talk about 5,000, they talk about 20,000, they talk about 250,000, and they show that efficiencies and inefficiencies are derived at the various plateaus. Now, surely, rather than us reinventing the wheel and going through an arduous process and paying a consultant a huge amount of money to dig that out, I would love to have DCA say, got you some good stuff here, buddy, just all you have to do is know how to read. Can you do that?
I can find out.
I'd like that.
Information.
I'd like you to let me know.
Sure.
So maybe to transition, unless other people have questions, would DCA be prepared to help us tweak the draft RFP we have to hire a consultant?
Sure.
And again, working with, we kind of sort of working with.
My understanding was, though, from the material that I had seen, that was being worked through Cherry Hill.
So we
Wrong in reading
think
that.
it would maybe be prudent for us to try to get a draft done really a little bit more expeditiously than that, because we're sort of in a chicken and the egg process. The Cherry Hill folks aren't prepared at this point to be spending a lot of municipal resources on that process, and they want to have some sense of where we're going in our plan to raise the funds to do an RFP. Neither municipality currently is prepared to spend municipal funds on a consulting study. So we.
I don't have a point of order, all right, you'll finish, but I got a point of order on this. We have 3 templates that have been mailed to us already, RFPs.
We understand, but we need to come up with an integrated proposal. It needs to ask the right questions, and at least I'll say on my behalf, I'm not an expert on all the metes and bounds of what the study ought to look like, and again, what a best practices study would look like tweaked for these 2 communities. And so if DCA has staff that could help us do that, that would make the process, in my opinion, go much more swiftly.
Well, I don't think they're gonna prepare your RFP for you, but I think what you need is a draft RFP. I can, they've certainly been through the process before.
Well, we have 3 of them. We have one from Sussex, we have one from Princeton, and we have one from somewhere else. They were mailed to George,
Right.
they were mailed to Bernie, and they were mailed to, who else? I guess, well, Bernie, Rich, and you. They mailed them to you.
Well, I understand, but you're obviously not satisfied with those.